In this lesson, we're going to continue with our work on our troll folklore narrative and be exploring the effect that an adjective has to describe. So firstly, what is an adjective and what is its purpose? On the screen you can see a cascade of trolls of different artists. And what an adjective should do is it should make our phrasing more precise. So we know that we have 6 trolls, that's our noun, but an adjective will add that extra detail, that extra precision to allow us to actually identify which troll we are actually looking at. It's a little bit like a game of Guess Who. So if I was looking at these trolls and I was to say the troll had the pink-haired troll, we would know that that expanded noun phrase would point to a certain troll. If I was saying the vicious troll, again, we would be able to start identifying which troll that actually was. Now what I'd like you to do is to pause the video now, and I'd like you to work with someone else, and I'd like you to, in your head, select one of the trolls that you can see. Create yourself some adjectives to describe that troll, and see whether your partner could spot the troll you were talking about. And then swap roles, so your partner can start thinking of some adjectives, and you can try and identify which troll they're talking about. And let's see how precise your adjectives can be and how quickly the troll that you're talking about can be identified through that language you're using. So pause the video and join me when you're ready to continue. Now you've explored what adjectives can do and how they can describe a noun. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper with it, and we're going to be thinking about how that description that you're going to be creating is going to show your attitude or your opinion of something. So if we look at our troll on the screen right now, we could either think this troll was a good troll or a bad troll, and the language we use is going to tell the reader which one we actually think it is. So we've got to really carefully think about our vocabulary in order to select the correct word. Now looking at our troll on the image on the screen, the adjectives, the description that we'll use for this shows our attitude and our opinion on this character. So it can either be positive words or negative words. Now what we're going to be thinking about here is what words we can use, and then we're going to be thinking about that intent. So if we're looking at the idea of him sitting there, I think that he's quite a calm character. He seems to be sat there, and I think that he's quite harmonious. I've got the idea that he's serene. He looks to me like he's a placid troll. We can see the person crawling in front and all the deer, and he seems quite calm and relaxed. However, if I wanted to change it the other way round, and I wanted to think that this person crawling along with the deer is actually trying to escape this vicious and scary troll, then of course this idea of calm, I'm going to have to be thinking about negative ways, the way that he's saying. So this time he's not going to be calm. We can say that my troll is agitated. Maybe he's feeling angry, our angry troll. Maybe he could be nervous. And we can see straight away when we start thinking about these, the same troll, the calm troll, the harmonious troll, the serene troll, the placid troll, can suddenly become the agitated troll, the angry troll, the nervous troll, the violent troll. And look at the way that that description changes your thought as the reader of who this character actually is. We're taking the same picture, we're seeing the same things, but the language we're using to describe is starting to tell the reader what we want them to actually think as a writer. And this is what we're going to be looking at this session. We're not going to be thinking about just throwing words at a picture, just to make our sentences that little bit longer, to make our writing on the page last that bit more. What we're going to be looking at is by selecting the correct vocabulary to be very precise with our thoughts and our opinions and our attitude to the things that are actually happening. And in this session, what we're going to be thinking about is the idea of our setting for our folklore tale. So we're going to be thinking about where these trolls are actually based, remembering that we've been looking at Icelandic troll tales. So in front of you, you can see a lovely picture of the Icelandic coastline, and we're going to be thinking about ways that we can describe this to create our expanded noun phrases, but thinking about the attitude and the intent that we're having when we're writing. Do we want it to be a positive, happy place that we're telling the writer about, or do we want it to be a slightly darker, more terrifying place that we're going to be telling the reader about? And the vocabulary we're going to be choosing is going to really sort of show the reader what we're thinking. And the way that we can do this to make the description really be painted in front of our reader's eyes is by using our 5 senses to be thinking about our description, and then adding that, getting that extra layer off. Is that vocabulary that I'm choosing a positive, a happy word, or a negative, a scary word? And that's what we're going to be thinking with this. So be thinking about your 5 senses and how we can describe the things that you can see on your image. Now, the place that I always start with this is by looking at the image and identifying the different nouns. Now, if we can identify 4, 5, maybe 6 different nouns from those images, we've got 4, 5, 6 different things that we can start describing. And of course, I might not just be describing it in one way, I might be describing it in multiple ways, which suddenly allows me to have lots of ideas to start putting into my writing and making it so the reader can really see what I'm trying to get them to see. So on our picture we can see I have the sunset, I have the rocks, I've got the stone stack, which is some of the vocabulary I've taken from the story, the cliffs, the birds, the moss, the waves, the water. So you can see, nice and simply, I've just identified those things. And now this is when I can start using my 5 senses to really start describing these a little bit more clearly and with a little bit more precision. So let's take one of probably the easiest things to talk about when we're looking at my image, and that's the waves. And we're going to be thinking about the 5 senses that we can use to start describing what these waves are like. So let's think about what we can see firstly. So I can see that these are big waves, large, towering. I can see the frothing. I can see that they're white. When we think about the sounds I can hear them crashing. I can hear them booming. When we think about the smell of these, we can be thinking the salty, the crisp, the clean. When we're thinking about that taste, maybe we're thinking about saltiness again. When we're thinking about our touch, maybe we're thinking they're cold, icy. So you can see straight away, just thinking about one of my nouns and thinking about what can I see, what can I hear, what can I smell, what can I taste, what can I touch. And also notice the amount of different words I've got. For seeing something, in this case for waves, I can see them quite clearly. Hearing them, I can hear them quite clearly. For some reason, and I didn't think this when I first started, but I can smell them quite clearly. But it's the taste and the touch maybe that I'm having less to write about. And this is the lovely thing when we start thinking about this, about these 4, 5, 6 different nouns. Some of them you will see lots, some of them you will hear lots, some of them you might be able to taste lots. You're going to really focus on different senses. But if you try and take each noun individually and come up with your 5 different senses and give yourself a time limit for them, so you're not going to start procrastinating, you're not going to start labouring them, that's when you're going to be able to really move on with your writing and get those adjectives, get those descriptions to be that little bit more clear. Once we've done that, that's when we can start thinking about these waves. And am I asking for them to be happy waves or sad waves? And I think when I'm looking at words like crashing and booming, I'm thinking this water's quite scary. The towering, white, booming waves. The icy waves frothing as they boom against the cliffs. And we can move on with that. Now, once you've completed that first part of the activity where you're going to be finding your adjectives to describe, remembering your 5 different senses that you can be using there, and completing the close activity of filling in the blanks from our sentences, we're then going to move on to challenge 3, which is where you're going to be writing your own sentences. And with this, we get our tip. Writing your own sentences to describe the setting using your best adjectives. So we're really going to be thinking about that mood and atmosphere we're going to be setting. So for example, if I'm thinking about my waves, I can simply have my huge, towering waves frothing and foaming as they crash against the cliffs. Let's proofread this to make sure I'm happy. Huge, towering waves frothing and spelling mistake, so we can correct that. Foaming as they crash against the cliffs. And then I might be thinking about something else. I might be thinking about a seagulls flocking and perching at the top of the moss covered cliffs. And I can move on to my next one, which might be sort of the golden sun sinking below the horizon, making the dusk sky blush. And you can see straight away I'm starting to think about my way that I can put my adjectives together. For me, I do actually think about that idea of trying not to start with my determiners and not to start with nouns all the time. So I have played around in my head of how to do this. But if you did sort of think about the idea of huge towering waves, white noisy seagulls, rough cold rocks, you're still going to get that same idea, which is going to be good to be able to use in our next session. So what I want you to do now is to think about how you're going to put these adjectives that you're creating for task 1 together to create me a little passage to describe the setting that you can see. And you could use my image that we've seen on the video, and I've put a copy of that onto the website, or you could be using one of the images that you can see from the worksheet itself, where you've got all the different places that take place, or maybe you're going to refer back to that very first video that we did for the introduction of our Trolls narrative unit, and you're going to be looking at those pictures. So I look forward to seeing your descriptive passages and seeing what you see in my head by using the vocabulary which is going to be most effective. Good luck.